there a form? Is there a call for applications? Who do we apply to? By what time do we apply? Is it in writing? How do we do this? Do I need people to sponsor me? Do I need proposers and seconders? Do I need a certain number of people just supporting my nomination? I think it's important to provide all that. And then also we have to know, is there any fee payable? Is there a cost? And when we're talking about fee, is the party having any consideration for those who have formed the special interest groups? Again, these are the youth, women, people with disabilities, the minorities, and the marginalized. So is there any special waiver for SIGs when it comes to the fee payable? And this is just to try, it's an affirmative action kind of clause that you may consider as a party to include. And then are there special qualifications to be able to apply for nomination? Of course, we have the constitutional and statutory qualifications for every seat that's contested at national level and even county level. But a party may also import its own special qualification. For instance, they might require, like I see Kenya does, that you have been a member for a certain period of time to be able to apply for certain seats and things like that. So what are the qualifications? Some parties talk about being active in the party. Some parties talk about being fully paid up. So what are the extra qualifications that one needs to be able to apply for nominations? And it's good to set these out clearly so that there's no doubt. So it's not at the last minute when I want to apply, then suddenly they say, hey, Rosalind, you've not been a member for 1 year, you can't, you know? So let's have this clearly so that even when I am joining and expressing interest, I already know I qualify for the goal where I'm headed. So let that be part of nomination rules, and we have it there. And then there's always the process of vetting. How is one vetting? What is the matrix for vetting, and what does it include? So I think all that is useful. And then appeals. Again, I say a contest must always have a dispute, must always have somebody who is not happy with the outcome. And what is this? Where can he get redress? So we must provide for that as well, redress, and what kind of redress. Then the other thing is the rules should relate to is the election process itself. There's the application for nomination that comes in advance, and then we have.
Yes.
Isaac, can you just mute the Okay, thank you. So then there is the election process itself. So the election process itself will provide for what kind of primaries do we want to hold? Are we having delegates Congress kind of primaries? Are we having universal suffrage? What kind of primaries are we talking about as a political party? Are we having direct selection by the party leaders? We need to be clear that these are the kind of things that we can do within our party. It also should provide for who qualifies to participate in these nomination processes. So we need to know, do I have to be a party member? Do I just walk in and say, I like Narc Kenya, I want to vote with you? Let's know who can vote. And then location of polling station. Location of polling station is a crucial element as well, because where you locate a polling station can dictate the outcome of that nomination. Maybe the polling stations are all on the other side, on my opponent's side. They're like 10 polling stations. And then on my side where I have lots of support, there are only 2 very far apart, which means people will have to walk long distances, people will have to queue long hours, and that is discouraging. While on the other side, people will have a lot of access. So location of polling stations can also be a rigging point, and therefore we need to provide clearly how do we locate our polling station. Security of the ballot, this is security of the ballot materials, the election materials, and the polling station center itself should be provided for. How agents are accredited, who can be an agent, when do I need, how do I get my agent accredited? All those issues must also be provided for. When it comes for voting hours, again, we need to know what are the hours of voting and when can the voting hours be extended, you know? if for instance the voting starts late, can we extend those hours outside the hours provided in there? If there was chaos or other issues and the voting was disrupted, if it was disrupted by heavy rainfall or something, what happens? Can we relocate the voting to somewhere else and continue? We've got to talk around those issues as well. And then the counting and declaration of results and forwarding of the results, all those are crucial issues that you need to provide for. So that if you send the result by SMS, someone doesn't go and challenge it and say that was not a manner in which we authorized forwarding of the result. So we've got to provide all those things. And then again, a right of appeal. So right of redress, right of appeal should be provided for. Now, one of the challenging things that we need to provide for, and I don't have an answer for this yet, is how to achieve gender balance and inclusivity on the list, final list of candidates that we give to IEBC. How can we factor or formulate our nomination rules so that the final list that we are going to give to IEBC meets gender balance and meets inclusivity? And when I'm talking gender balance here, I'm not talking about just giving nominations to women in areas where you have no clout or things like that. It should be areas where it can translate into an actual election at the national level. So I don't have an answer on how that can be achieved at party level, but we can start thinking around it and see how to brainstorm and see what to do around that. It's been a challenge. It continues to be a challenge. Now, funding and promoting special interest groups. Are there any provisions for it? If Narc Kenya got money from the political parties fund, fortunately, how would we then distribute this money? So we should be thinking forward to a space and time when we might benefit from the political parties fund. And if we did, how would members then access it? Because there's a provision that 30% should be used to promote the election of SIG, special interest groups. So we need to have some rules that say this is how you apply, this is the criteria, this is how you access it. So let's think around that as we go forward. And then there's also fairness. Let's put in rules that embrace fairness of the process so that that's not an issue going forward. And then result slips and nomination certificates. Okay. So result slips and nomination certificates, how and when are they given? Who are the authorized signatories? Who may sign this certificate? I think that's very crucial. I cannot be gainsaid because signing of certificates is always also a thorny area and a thorny issue. So it's good to provide categorically that certificates shall be signed by X and Y and Z, and it's clearly provided. So that we are not playing ping pong at that time as to who am I supposed to look for? Where am I supposed to get my certificate from? So let's provide for those as well very clearly. And then the other thing we have to provide around to make sure the nominations provide for is the dispute resolution body, whatever name it's given by the party. We must make some rules around dispute resolution. And these will deal with things like the costs of accessing, of moving the dispute resolution body to hear your matter, whether to devolve or not. If we want, we may actually provide grounds for appealing to the dispute resolution body so that we limit them to certain issues that make it very easy to determine the appeals. We must provide for who may appeal. Is it just the candidate who feels shortchanged, or can any party member appeal? We've got to make that very clear. And then what is the procedure? And make an obligation on the elections body to provide records of the particular nomination being challenged. Timelines are crucial. Within what time shall we do this? Because we know this process, as Tabu said in the beginning, it's a calendar of events and it's all rolling. So timelines are normally very tight. So we need to provide the timelines here so that somebody doesn't bring an appeal maybe on the 5th day, and they know that on the 7th day we have to hand over a list to IEBC. So timelines it's very important if timelines are provided. Provide for written and reasoned decisions. I think this is crucial, because if there's no written decision, what do I use to confirm the outcome of that particular tribunal that had the matter? So it's good to have written and reasoned decisions. Then how do I access the proceedings after the matter has been had by the dispute resolution body? I may need the proceedings for various issues. Maybe I want to appeal further to the political parties tribunal, or to the High Court, or to the IBC, or maybe I want to take it to the party to show that, look, I've got a ruling in my favor. So how do I access the proceedings? And then we need an undertaking within the rules that the party shall respect and honor the outcome or the finding of the IDRB, and maybe provide finality to it to a certain extent, so that the decision of the dispute resolution body, for instance, cannot be overruled by the elections board or the governing body. So maybe provide that it will honor and respect the outcome, and maybe there's finality within the party in terms of that finding. Then you may consider importing ADR, on alternative dispute resolution, and that's just a may. It depends on the party. And when I'm talking alternative dispute resolution here, I'm talking mediation, I'm talking negotiation, I'm talking conciliation, consensus, all those other things that we can sit as people and just talk in an informal setting. So this can happen at the branch level, at the grassroots, between communities, between candidates, and a consensus can be arrived at in alternative dispute resolution setting. So a party might wish to provide that they recognize and welcome ADR as a process of resolving disputes between party members, or party members and the party officials, and things like that. So you might want to consider that as well. And then finally, nomination rules should provide offenses and punishment, so that people know the consequences of their actions. It is very sad when there's no offense or punishment provided within the nomination rules, and then suddenly the party tells you, we disqualify you because you are canvassing for votes outside the polling center. And that was not provided within our nomination rules. So it is good to make people know that these are actions that we do not condone, and these are the consequences if you're found contravening those particular provisions. So rules should ideally provide offenses and punishment as well. So those are some of the things I can say in just opening in terms of what is ideal to see in nomination rules. So I will now look at your particular rules as a party, and at the end I'll give a summary of what I think can be done to improve it. But as I said at the outset, these are very, very good rules, and I commend the party for this. They're probably the best I've seen so far out of 6 parties to date. So I think I commend you for them. Now, the parties start off by just talking about, okay, let me start that these rules are titled National Elections and Nominations Board. Is that how they're titled? I think so. Tabu might help me there. They are not titled nomination rules. I don't know whether I missed the page that titles them nomination rules, but I think they're titled National Elections and Nominations Board rules or something. So if they're not titled nomination rules, we might be thinking around giving the entire framework a general title and not just about the body, because it talks about more than just the elections board. I see something in there about a dispute resolution body, and other organs of the party are also mentioned. So we may want to retitle that. Now, it starts off by putting bringing in a background as to why we have a National Elections and Nominations Board. And they found this in the party constitution, which provides that there shall be a National Elections and Nominations Board for the party. The composition of the National Elections and Nominations Board is that one, it shall be constituted by the National Executive Council or Committee, I can't remember, National Executive Committee, I think, and shall consist of 5 persons of integrity appointed by the NEC, of whom not more than 2/3 shall be of the same gender. So I think that's all in order. It is good that gender provisions are taken into account at that, and the person appointing is also clearly stated as the National Executive Council Committee. Now, when we talk of 2/3 here, this is well enough, but what about inclusivity? What about the other special interest groups? How do we embrace them in this clause? We might want to rethink this to import inclusivity as well of other special interest groups. Then it goes on to talk about the procedure of identifying and selecting the chairperson and members of that national election and nominations board. And it provides that the National Executive Committee shall from within itself constitute a selection panel. So they from themselves, they'll take a few of them who shall be in a selection panel. The selection panel shall call for, shall invite applications, and from the invited application, they will shortlist, interview, and select members and chair of the board. They say that the rule says that the selection panel is the one that establishes the criteria for appointing the people to that board. But certain disqualifications are clear. Those disqualifications are that if someone has held office or stood for elections in the preceding 5 years, they don't qualify. If they're a party leader of another political party, they don't qualify. If they're under investigation by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, they don't qualify. If they're facing or have been convicted of criminal or corruption charges, again, they don't qualify. Or if they've been adversely mentioned in any parliamentary report or any report by a commission of inquiry, then again, they do not qualify. So I think this is just speaking to the integrity of the person, so that somebody who falls under those disqualifications lacks the requisite integrity to sit in the board. And I think that is fine. Now, it talks about the interview process, and it's a very elaborate provision there about the interview process. And it talks about the selection panel will interview those they have shortlisted. They'll come up with a scoring matrix. Every member of the panel shall score each applicant, and then overall marks shall be taken and a final decision made. So they're talking about a very transparent criteria for shortlisting, interviewing, and scoring the applicants. And after the scoring has been done, then they will come up with a report of the process that they undertook. And that report should also list the applicants in order of performance, and then also provide a recommendation on who should be appointed and justify that recommendation. Now, that report is to be shared with the National Executive Council. And if the National Executive Council accepts the report, or with whatever changes they make, they will then approve the report and send it to the party leader or the Secretary General for appointment. So that's the process, and I think it's very transparent, very well set out, and very elaborately set out in the rules. And again, I commend you for that, because there's no doubt as to how one ends up being a member of the National Elections and Nominations Board. Then it goes further to provide that the Director of Elections and the Deputy Director of Elections shall be ex officio members of the National Elections and Nominations Board, and the Director of Elections shall serve that board as secretary. Now, being ex officio means then that they do not vote, but they participate in the deliberations and they can fit in. And then it also provides that the board shall of itself elect a vice chair as its first meeting from amongst its members. The chairperson will be directly elected and appointed by the selection panel and approved by the NEC and appointed by the SEG. But the vice chair will be appointed by the members themselves at their first meeting. And then it provides that those who opt to serve on this board cannot seek nomination on the party ticket. So those are the provisions. I think very well crafted, very well thought out, and I have no issues with any of them. Then we go on to discuss the powers and duties of the National Election and Nomination Board. And the powers and duties are set out as follows. One is to make regulations, rules, regulations, orders, or notices for ensuring conduct of regular, free, fair, peaceful, and transparent elections. So they're in charge of setting up all the rules, regulations, the structure for the nominations to take place. And then in consultation with the National Management Committee, they're supposed to organize, coordinate, and supervise all the elections and nominations. So there's a National Management Committee, which exists in your constitution. And so the National Elections and Nominations Board works with them because the Management Committee offers the administrative support to help them organize, coordinate, and supervise the elections. So that happens, and I think that's okay. And then on the recommendations of the National Management Committee, they can amend or alter party nominations and election rules. Now, for this, I would just say that there must be timelines after which rules cannot be altered because we cannot be shifting goalposts when the game is in progress. That will not be a football match. So we should provide timelines. What is the outside? When must all amendments have been done and the rules stay static so that we can hold the nomination? So let's provide timelines to this. And then also, I think if we are going to make party nomination and election rules or even amend or alter them, public participation of the party members is important because they are the ones affected. And public participation is now a constitutional requirement. So I think it would just be tidy if somehow here within this recommendation, there's a way we can also import the participation of members in the amendment or alteration of the rules. So we could probably be proposing them and then going back to the members for validation and moving on. So whatever, but let's have something around timelines and public participation. And then the other function is to appoint all the election officials so that the people who are going to help with the conducting the election are to be appointed by the National Elections and Nominations Board. The other function is to vet all nominees. So they're supposed to have a criteria by which they will vet nominees. And then the national chairperson and secretary general shall sign and seal the certificates of nomination. So again, this is a plus because here the authorized signatory are clearly stated. It's the national chairperson and the secretary general, and there's no doubt as to that. So I think that is okay. And I looked at your constitution. It provides for wherever there's a vacancy in the office of any of these two, it's provided. So there will never be a lacuna in terms of who should sign the document. And then the other thing it provides is that the National Executive Committee should open an account into which all nomination fees is paid or deposited. So I think this is just to be able to organize your accounting so that the money is not mixed up with the other funds of the party. And then it says that the National Election Board may establish dispute resolution panels. Now, I find this interesting that it's the National Elections and Nominations Board that is being given the power to establish a dispute resolution panel. I think this may not be a very ideal situation. If there's going to be a dispute resolution panel, it should be appointed by the National Executive Committee, and it should be independent and distinct from the National Elections Board and owe no allegiance to the National Elections and Nominations Board, because indeed they're going to sit over the decisions of the national and outcomes of activities conducted by the national. Sorry? Okay. Yeah, because the dispute resolution panel is going to sit in decision over activities conducted by the National Elections and Nominations Board. So it is not ideal that this is the board that may establish the dispute resolution panel. I think if we can relook that, it might be useful. And then provided that, it goes on to say that provided that where the National Elections and Nomination Board has for any reason been unable to perform all or any of the duties specified above, the National Executive Committee shall assume all the powers and duties of the National Elections and Nominations Board. I think this is a very scary provision that you need to rethink. The National Executive Committee will assume all the powers and duties, where for any reason the National has been unable to perform any of its duties. You know, this is draconian. If I could just say that and leave it there, kindly rethink it and see what you can do with it. I think it's very, very draconian and a scary provision in there, because at any time the NEC can decide that NEB has failed in its duties and take over the task of the National Elections Board, and that's very dangerous. We must have particular instances, if this is ever going to happen, that this can happen. And why not appoint a second body immediately to take over, like a caretaker committee? This should be rethought, I would say. And then it says that, it goes on to say that the National Elections and Nominations Board shall be independent and shall act in accordance with the rules of natural justice in consultation with the National Executive Committee, and that's fine. It also provides that the National Elections and Nominations Board shall carry out any other functions assigned to it by the National Executive Committee, the National Management Committee, the National Governing Council, and the National Delegates Congress. So those are people who can assign work to the National Election and Nominations Board. So then the document provides for internal party dispute resolution mechanism, and it founds this in the party constitution, which provides for an internal dispute resolution mechanism to be set up as located in your party constitution. Now the constitution provides, and they copy it here as well, that there shall be 5 members of the dispute resolution mechanism shall have 5 members, and they shall be established by the National Executive Committee, and not more than 2/3 shall be of the same gender. And their mandate, their functions are to receive, investigate, and resolve the disputes related to the process and results of nominations. Now, you can see here that immediately there's already a contradiction in the document. In the previous slide, we had a situation where the National Elections and Nominations Board was being given the power to set up dispute resolution panels. And now here we see it's the National Executive Committee that has the power to establish the internal dispute resolution mechanism. So let's reconcile that inconsistency. And I think let's keep it to what your constitution says, which says that the power to establish the dispute resolution mechanism lies with the National Executive Committee. And I think that's fine. And then again, I will talk about inclusivity. When we talk about 2/3 gender balance, let's always think about inclusivity of other special interest groups. How do we include youth? How do we include people with disabilities? How do we include the marginalized and the minorities? Let us always talk about gender inclusivity and the same breath, so that we are all embracing of. Yes.
Council, if I may interject.
Please go ahead.
The power given to the National Elections Board is to have panels at the branch, sub-branch, ward levels, and the polling stations. Maybe we need to.
Thank you, Tabu, for that.
Hello?
Yes, Tabu, go ahead. You're saying the difference is the other one is the panels at the branches, and this one is the national dispute resolution mechanism.
Yes, but I still hear you out in terms of giving the same NEB authority to even constitute those committees when the committees are going to be addressing the issues, the mess, so to speak,
Yes.
that the NEP could have created. But they have needed to bring that to the attention of members. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for that clarification. I think what you're saying is very clear, that therefore that the National Election and Nominations Board will be appointing panels at the branches, and the NEC appoints the main office. But I think the ideal is what you've just concluded, that even those panels should actually be appointed, if then not by NEC, then by the internal dispute, the national IDRB that has been created. So you can either give now that power to NEC or allow now the IDRB to form their sub panels, because their decisions will definitely land at the IDRB eventually. So I think that's in order. And then also therefore, Tabu, let us consider making it clear that this is a national internal dispute resolution mechanism and not the panels. And going forward, I was going to say that these are actually the only provisions, this slide I'm having on are the only provisions around the internal party dispute resolution mechanism in the nomination rules for the party. And we need to beef them up. We need to beef them up by bringing in clearly their functions. Let's bring in those panels within this part of the nomination rules. Let us bring in the timelines. When can one access this dispute resolution mechanism? In what manner can one access it? Is it in writing? Is there an application form? The fees issues, let us bring it all into this part so that we deal with the dispute resolution mechanism as a whole within this document. There may be references to timelines later in the document, but it is good that when we are talking within the nomination rules about the dispute resolution, let us cover all ground and make it very clear and have clarity around those issues. So, Tabu, are we on the same page? Daniels, are we on the same page? Okay, I will continue. Now, the next part of the document deals with nomination fees, and it provides the fees expected for various candidates. And what I would say here is thank you, NAC Kenya, for taking care of the special interest groups and giving them a 10% waiver. Very powerful provision in there. But it could be more, but like in Inisawa, at least there's a waiver. So for the president, the nomination fee is 1 million. For the governor, it is 200,000. For the parliamentary candidate, this is Senate, women rep, and member of the national constituency MP, it is 50,000. And then for the county assembly, it is 25,000. And then we have a 10% discount for special interest groups. I think that's very useful, and we thank you for that. Nomination procedure for party lists. We go to nomination procedures for party lists. Now it provides that the National Elections and Nominations Board, in consultation with the National Executive Committee, will come up with procedures for developing party lists. This is fine, but wouldn't it be better if we outlined the procedures so that for posterity, everybody knows this is the procedure and it doesn't keep changing with every National Elections and Nominations Board? Shouldn't we just probably come up with standard procedures that can be used by the party for posterity? That's just a thought planted in there. The persons who want to be on the party list must meet the eligibility criteria for party candidates. So I think that means that if it's an issue of the number of years, the membership, then they must also be meeting that. Then it recognizes that the listing shall take into account the zebra formula. The zebra formula is actually a statutory provision where you must list man, woman, man, woman, man, woman, or woman, man, whichever way it goes. And then a powerful provision there is that priority in those lists will be given to special interest groups. And again, I give you 100% for that, and I thank you. Our proposals shall be generated by the branches and scrutinized and vetted by the National Elections and Nominations Board. Now, I would advise, and this is just advice, that we have parameters and some rules around how the proposals shall be generated by the branches. This is just a very open-ended provision that just gives the branches the power to generate. How do they generate? What do they look at? What is their matrix? So can we have some rules? My advice is, can we have some rules on what the branch has to do in generating these lists? Do they invite applicants? Do they just look around at who has been active? Let's have some sort of rules. It will help us not to have this feeling that the branch officials are just putting in the names of the people who are there, who are friendly to them. Let's try and have some rules. And then the National Elections and Nominations Board shall compile the list and forward to the National Executive Committee for approval. And I think that's okay. The criteria for party lists, if to meet the appointment or to be a part of the party list. And when I talk about party list, this is what Kenyans normally call top up. Is that what we call it? Top ups. So party list ni wale watu watakuwa nominated on our party ticket to top up the elected people in the various assemblies. So the person must not be disqualified under law, must be a Kenyan citizen with a national identity card or passport, must be over 18 years of age, must be a registered voter. Now here it provides must be a life member of the party and active party member. I underlined life member here because when I looked at the provisions for even governor or senator or member of parliament, I don't think the requirement was a life member. So I don't know whether this is the actual intention, because it could be. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just asking you to relook it and say whether this is what you intended, because in the other slide you said they shall have the same criteria as for other party members. But when we come here, we see it's reading life members. So just go back and reconcile that to the intention of the party. And then must also have the requisite educational qualifications, must not be an aspirant or candidate, and must meet any other constitutional or statutory requirements. So this not being an aspirant or candidate is actually also a statutory provision, so it cannot be blamed on your party. It's actually a constitutional provision. So the documents for that one who seeks to be on the party list must provide to the party are the documents that the person must provide. So there is a nomination form that the person will have to fill in triplicate, and then it must have a supporter that also signs it. And then the person must be a registered voter in the electoral area in which they want to be nominated. And then the proposer and seconder must also be registered voters in that electoral area. They must sign the code of conduct, and it must be witnessed by a commissioner for oath. They must provide a certified copy of their national identity document. They must provide a certified copy of their voters card or acknowledgement slip. They must also provide a certified copy of their life membership certificate. They must provide a certified copy of their O-level certificate, and they must also provide a certified copy of the post-secondary education academic qualification certificate to the party. These are all statutory requirements, and the party is just ensuring that they are complying with what IBC will require from them. So those are actually in line with statutory requirements and are in order. The other documents that one needs to provide are evidence of active Narc Kenya membership. Now, this is for the party itself. I think they want to assure themselves that you have been active. I just don't know what kind of evidence this would be, but maybe a narrative of the things you have done for and on behalf of the party. The party would like to see a CV illustrating your educational qualifications, competencies and work experience. And then the party wants you to meet the Chapter 6 requirements. And in that regard, again, they ask for a certificate of good conduct from the DCI. I think your document writes CID, but we now have DCI. So you might want to just amend that to be in line with what we have today. Tax clearance certificate from KRA, a HELB loan clearance certificate, the Education Loans Board clearance certificate. The Credit Reference Bureau must also confirm you're not a bad debtor from their records. And there must also be a form from Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission that you have delivered and it have been acknowledged that they have received it, just to show that you have no issues at Ethics and Anti-Corruption as well. So those are the documents that are expected from someone who would like to make the Narc Kenya party list. And I think they are in order, apart from the fact that there are no particular rules for how the procedure or arriving at the list. If that can be added, I think it would enrich and strengthen your nomination rules to a certain extent. Now, the next part deals with nomination rules for presidential candidate. Now, the nomination rules for the presidential candidate are very, very clear and well stated out. They say that it will start off by an advertisement in the local daily with wide circulation, inviting people to apply to be the presidential nominee, candidate nominee for Narc Kenya. So it provides that the National Elections and Nominations Board shall determine when that advert will appear. And I think this is normally dictated by the IBC overall calendar. We of course expect this about 3 months to the general election. So normally around May or end of April, this will normally happen. Then once people register their interest, it provides that the registration process shall be at the National Secretariat. So I suppose that it means that people expressing interest must send their expression of interest to the National Secretariat, and this shall then be handed over to the National Elections and Nominations Board. And there is the fee that we talked about, 1 million. It must be sent also with the application at the same time. Before your application can be considered, that registration fee must have been received by the party. And then, so once this is done, the call is made and people apply. The National Elections and Nominations Board, the National Elections and Nomination Board shall determine the election date. Now, what are the qualifications for the presidential candidate? The nomination rules provide that the person must have been a member of Narc Kenya for at least 2 years prior to this nomination. So what is not clear is, what if I had failed to pay my nomination fee in between? Like if I paid in 2019, then I did not pay. Okay, if I paid in 2019, then I did not pay in 2020. Will my paying in 2021 still be counted as I having been a member for 2 years? Does it require that I should have been paid up? I don't know. Just maybe we want to talk about those issues, because I know those questions always come up. What if there was a gap in my membership? If there's a year I didn't pay, can I pay up in arrears and make good? All those things, I think we need to find a way of addressing them so that they are not an issue. I think so far we are just lucky that parties hardly have very contested nominations for the slot of president. But those are questions that I think the nomination rules should just speak to and answer, so that the 2 years is well understood. If I can pay in arrears and make good my 2 years, then that is good enough. If I can't pay, let it be understood. And let me not think that the party is blocking me just because they don't want me to offer challenge to someone else within the party. And then the person must be a citizen of Kenya. by birth and a hold of a national identity card or a Kenyan passport as may be prescribed by law. Must be a registered voter in any constituency in Kenya, must be 18 years and above, must be conversant with support and subscribe to the party ideology, philosophy, mission, and values, and must be qualified to stand in an election which he seeks under the provisions of the law, for the time being regulating and governing the conduct of elections in Kenya. So what this does, it also recognizes the constitutional and statutory provisions, and at the same time, the party is also setting its own conditions. So it has more conditions. If we go to the next slide, we are talking about signing the party code of conduct and abiding by the party pledge of commitment. And unfortunately, the party code of conduct and pledge of commitment are not part of the nomination rules set to me, but I believe they exist somewhere, and it would be nice if they're part of the nomination rules so that in the same document, I can access them. Pay nomination fees as shall be determined, and it's already determined in this document as 1 million. So what I do not know is when we write here as shall be determined by National Elections and Nominations Board, is it saying that the board can overrule the provisions in the earlier clause where we talked of nomination fees? Or what are we saying? Because I think once we provide for nomination fees in a clause on its own, then we should just be talking of pay the nomination fees as provided. And then if we want to review the fee, that clause of nomination should provide that these fees may be reviewed from time to time, and probably say by the National Elections and Nominations Board, if that's the entity you want to give the power to review. Although I think that review might be the mandate of the National Executive Committee. Then submit a CV in the prescribed form and a valid certificate of good conduct. Be qualified to be a member of parliament. And then this is also personal to the party, to be nominated by 2,000 duly registered members of the party who are also registered voters from a majority of counties. Now, this can be interpreted in two ways. And the party should be able to explain it to us better. I could explain it to say that a candidate needs 2,000 supporters from at least 24 counties. Or I could interpret it to say that, so, okay, the first interpretation is 2,000 from each, 2,000 from each county and at least 24 counties. So I need 24 counties, and in each of the 24 counties, I have 2,000 supporters. And the other way is that I just need 2,000 supporters, but from at least 24 different counties. So we've got to make this clear so that we understand what is intended, and there's no doubt. Are we saying 2,000 supporters from each from 24 counties, or are we saying 2,000 supporters in total from a majority of the counties? Let's try and make that clear. And then qualifications for presidential candidate, they continue to say that that candidate must demonstrate commitment to the party, must not owe allegiance to a foreign state or another political party, must not be a public officer or be acting in any state or public office, must fulfill in, unless they are sitting, they're the sitting president, deputy president, or a member of parliament, then of course they can still vie. I think we are talking about the other offices that are not elective, like sitting in the public service and stuff like that. And then must fulfill any other requirements as determined by the IEBC. And just to go back on the previous clause, we saw that the last time they gave people, some IBC kind of waived this condition and saying, and you can apply for nomination in your party and resign after you win the party nomination. So there are things going on around that particular provision that we probably got to be alive to now and probably amend our rules to reflect. Fulfill any other requirements as determined by the IBC, demonstrate commitment to the party, not or allegiance. Oh, I think I repeated that. I apologize. Okay. Now, what does the party require the presidential candidate to provide to the party? The national copy of the national identity card or passport. Then it talks of platinum party membership certificate. I looked at the constitution and I was not able to see classification of membership. The party will probably be able to explain this to us later, but just reading through your constitution, I did not see classification of membership as platinum, bronze, and otherwise. So I'll need to be updated on that. Proof of up-to-date payment of annual subscriptions and contributions to the National Executive Committee, proof of registration as a voter, and duly completed prescribed nomination forms, a list in a prescribed form with the 2,000 signatures that were talked about earlier. So we've got to find an answer to whether that was just 2,000 or we are talking about 48,000. Let's understand that. I think 48,000 would be too large. So I think the interpretation is a total of 2,000 from at least 24 counties in total. Duly signed prescribed party code of conduct and pledge of commitment, the party vetting form, which is filled and then used to be vetted by the National Elections and Nominations Board, the party's code of conduct and electoral code of conduct, and the copy of the degree certificate for the particular candidate. If you could move to the next slide, I think I've finished it and we've not even seen it. Yeah. So those are the other requirements that the presidential candidate needs to submit. Now, polling procedure for the candidate, for the president. Now, this provides that the president shall be elected by universal suffrage. And this is a very interesting provision because most parties propose that their presidential candidate be nominated through delegates Congress. But your nomination rules provide that the presidential candidate will be nominated by universal suffrage of party members. So that means we will hold an election in all our branches so that everyone participates in electing the candidate. And if that's the intention, that is fine. I know the delegates' way is always chosen to be able to ring fence the position and ensure certain outcomes. The National Elections and Nominations Board shall originate the program of the day. The officer in charge shall organize to have the voting equipment, materials, and duly appointed staff sitting in the place in time. And it provides that voting shall start at 8 a.m. and end at 4 p.m. at the designated polling stations. Now, again, I want to raise the issue about the voting hours. What if voting starts late? Can we extend the hours? When you say voting starts at 8 and stops at 4, what if there's a disruption in the course of the day in the voting? Again, can we make up the hours? What if we have people at the polling station still queuing to vote at 4 p.m.? Can we extend the hours? Let us be clear in our rules around that, those factors that can lead to extension of time so that we are not challenging each other at the end of the nominations. And then the presiding officer is supposed to put up a list of everyone who is contesting at that polling station and make sure that they're accessible and readable to all. Now, they say the ballot papers shall contain the electoral position being contested. That is clear. Each voter will get a ballot paper, will mark it and put it in the ballot box. And those who need assistance shall be appointed by NEB, who shall provide people to assist people who either need help with reading, writing, or otherwise shall be provided with help. Now, it provides that any ballot paper that does not bear the stamp of the party shall be invalid. And that's all very fine. The stamp shall be in the custody of the officer in charge of the nomination at every polling unit. So that means that every presiding officer has that official rubber stamp. Is there opportunity for abuse or misuse of this rubber stamp? And are there any other security features other than just that rubber stamp on a ballot paper? Let's think around that so that we tighten the security of the ballot paper. At the close of polling, all ballot boxes shall be sealed and put together and secured. So that I think is okay, and that's part of normal practices. And then it provides that voting shall be by secret ballot and each voter shall be entitled to one vote only. The voters must be in the party membership register held at the National Secretariat. Now, why I underline this is because there's no mention of the party register within these nomination rules. This is the only mention of it. So we've got to have provisions within these rules of now the party register as the party register, verification, and all those other issues we talked around about the party register. So let's find a way of having rules around that party register within these nomination rules. And then when we say must be in the party register held at the National Secretariat, are we also going to have copies of that register at the branches? Or what do we mean by the National Secretariat? Is the voting only going to occur at the National Secretariat? So they talk about inspection of the register shall be done at the close of the registration period, but again, we need proper provisions of where is it available? Is it only the National Secretariat? We know we have members up to the grassroots. How do they access this and how do we assist them? So let's have rules around the party register and very clear rules clarifying position. Candidates may appoint agents. The National Elections Board shall designate the polling unit and shall decide the kind of ballot papers to be used. I think that means they shall design the ballot papers. They may accredit observers and they shall do everything necessary to ensure we have a fair and credible elections. And the beautiful thing here is electronic voting and tallying is recognized by Narc Kenya as a manner in which elections shall occur. I think this is very progressive inclusion within your nomination rules. Now, counting of votes for president. Now, it provides that the sealed boxes will be opened by the officer in charge in the presence of the candidate and his or her appointed agent. And the counting shall start at the close of polling at the polling stations or designated polling units. The officer in charge will cause the cast votes to be sorted out to determine valid and invalid ones. And only, as we said earlier, only stamped ballots are considered. And where there's more than one mark that it is not clear who is being voted for, that's a spoiled vote. But where the voter has not placed any mark, that's a rejected vote. So we have spoiled votes and we have rejected votes. And then counting may take place in the presence of agents. I think that's repeated. And any ballot that does not bear the official stamp shall be deemed rejected. Now, once the votes are counted at the station, the officer that counted must fill in the result form, and the agents of the candidate present must also sign that result form after the officer announces that result. The officer shall then forward those results, and he can do this either via SMS or email, and it's important that this is provided. This provides clarity that the actual document doesn't have to reach. We can use SMS, we can use, I suppose SMS also includes WhatsApp so that you can take a picture of the result form and email and send it on. So maybe we want to add WhatsApp there as well, or other media by which it can go, so that we broaden it not just to SMS, because I think the idea here was to have a picture of the document sent. And then the failure of an agent to sign does not invalidate the results. Now, the officer in charge of the nominations shall deliver the completed results form to the county office. So from the polling station, the results are sent to the county office for formal announcements of the county tally. And then from the county tally, it is sent to the National Elections Board at the National Secretariat. It's the officer at the National Elections Board that shall announce and declare the overall winner of the result. So that means then that the tallying occurs at the National Secretariat desk after receiving. After receiving all the provisional results, the National Elections Board shall tally the results and announce the winner. And they say they can announce the winner even before receiving all the results if they see that the outcome shall not be affected. So that is what is said there. And then it provides that one may appeal that decision, and the National Elections Board shall appoint a team to hear appeals. Now, I don't know whether this is an ideal situation and whether this is something that should be encouraged, that it's the National Elections Board appointing an appeals team to look at what they had done. We might want to rethink that in light of what we had said earlier as well, so that we are in sync on all fours in terms of who appoints the appeals team, who appoints the tribunal that hears appeals. I think let us align the document so that this comes out as the same throughout the document. Okay. Now they say that after a presidential candidate is nominated and elected by the members, that candidate has the sole power to propose a running mate, and they must do so not later than 1 month to the IBC formal notification date. And this is all very good, but the wording says shall propose. So what happens after the candidate proposes a running mate is not provided for within these nomination rules. We need to provide, is that proposal cast in stone, or does it go to another entity to consider that proposal, and can it be rejected? Let us have rules that deals with that proposal of a running mate and the party's role in that proposal, so that there's no doubt that we can either reject or we have to accept. Let us just be clear in terms of what happens with that. So that's the material we have in the nomination rules around election of the presidential candidate for Narc Kenya. Now for governor, the procedure is almost almost the same as for president, because it starts off with the advertisement and inviting people to apply. And then after they apply, the registration process goes on and the NEB sets the election date. What may be different are the qualifications for governor candidate. Now the qualifications, next slide, please. Now we saw that for the president or presidential candidate, the person ought to have been a member for 2 years. But for governor, and this applies to senator, MP, and the others, they should only have been members for not less than 6 months. So again, the issues apply on how the 6 months run and whether the gaps are filled in. So we've got to deal with that. But the rest of the things are actually quite the same. The documents that are required, the qualifications are there. They must sign the party code of conduct. They must be Kenyans. They must be over 18. They must pay the nomination fees and all those other things, submit a CV or not, or allegiance to another party. All those are similar. Now, when it comes to support, for the president, we saw it was 2,000 supporters, but for the governor candidate, the issue is 1,000 supporters. So this is different, and that's another differentiation there. Then when it comes to membership, now we talked of 6 months there, but here it says gold party membership or platinum. Again, I will say I didn't see categories, and I hope the party can speak to this at the end of this presentation. So there's gold for governor, there's platinum for president, and there's silver for senator, members of parliament, and then there's bronze for county assembly. Those are the differences in this document going forward in terms of how the election process and procedure takes place. What else would be different? The voting hours, the comments stay the same. Okay, so basically going forward from here, it will be a repetition of the same clauses and it will be applying the same to governor. The polling procedure is the same, the nomination procedure is the same, the call for adverts is the same, a universal suffrage is the same, and announcing and tallying the vote is the same. Just that for the county assembly, the polling station result ends at the ward level. For MPs, members of parliament, say the women rep and the constituency member of parliament, it ends at the constituency level. And for Senate and governor, the vote ends at the county level, because clearly that's how the constituency is mapped out. The membership period is 6 months for all of them, all other contestants. They have to have been members of the party for 6 months. The membership category, as I said, is gold for governor, silver for senator, women rep, and constituency MP, and bronze for county assembly. And then the number of votes you need to get is 1,000 for governor. I think it is 1,000 for senator, and let me just confirm that for 500 for senator, 1,000 for governor, 500 for senator. Uh, 500 for women rep, and let me just see the one for member, and 500 for member of parliament. So the senator, the women rep, and the constituency MP, 500 supporters. And then for county assembly,
$250.
for county assembly is 250. Thank you for that. So that is what happens. The results must be forwarded to, in terms of forwarding the results, they must be forwarded to the National Elections Board within 48 hours after the tallying has been done at the levels that they're being done. So that is it for your rules, essentially. You can see that there's no clear provisions around how the Dispute Resolution Board will carry out its work. There are no clear provisions around offenses and the consequences of any offenses. We need to be clear how the dispute resolution panels are appointed. I think it's not wise to have NEB appointing them. And also just those little issues that I mentioned around some of the rules coming up, we can consider those. But basically the structure of your rules is quite good, I must say. And maybe you could also add the forms, the oaths, the code of conduct, and the various application or nomination forms, and just give us more rules around how the processes take place. So that's what I would say for your party rules. Very well written, very well crafted. And you actually consider what may happen in a lot of the instances, and I commend you for that. Asanteni sana. Daniel's back at you.
Thank you very much, Council, for that audit. And I want to say that it has been thorough. Allow me to maybe allow the members to also contribute. I will begin with the issue of the 2,000. The wording may create the ambiguity. However, it is 2,000 from a majority of counties. And this is actually, we just did replicate what IBC was requiring of presidential candidates. And we said if you are able to start to mobilize 48,000 members, then that is a good demonstration that you have support. Two, on the issue of membership, the membership categories are not in the constitution. Maybe that's an issue that we need to reconcile in the other documents, because we felt anytime you want to amend membership categories, if they are in the constitution, then it's very expensive, because going through the entire process of amending the constitution is actually very expensive. So maybe we need to apologize that we did not provide the other document that has the categories. And as you have rightly put it, the categories are for county assembly, bronze, silver, for the women rep, for National Assembly and Senate, so to speak. Then governor is gold, and the presidential candidate. Members are free to pay depending on their ability and the wish to support the party. The minimum is what is stated in terms of running, but you are free to pay upwards. Number three, the issue of beginning to vote at 8 and ending at 4. I have noted it is correct that there could be anything which will require either that you add time, or if people are still on the queue, you cannot say it is 4 o'clock. Be allowed it's beyond the time. Our ballot papers have security features. We have a watermark that only NEB and a few other people will actually detect. So any other ballot that is cast which doesn't have a watermark, definitely we will know that has come from another source. I also agree that there is very little mention of the party register in the rules, and I think it's good that you have raised it. We will think around how to make it part of the process. But I want to say that in areas where we conducted the candidates who had even copies of the party register, so that each one of them was aware this is what was going to be used for the party, and nobody would raise. The election officials were provided with the same. I've also taken note of the question you have raised, whether the party register is only at the national level, but the issue of ensuring that the party register not only is at the branches, but also is accessible by even people at the ward level. I think is good issue that you have raised. I want to admit, yes, there are no offenses and punishments are provided for in these rules, as you have rightly put. And I think moving forward is a matter that we are going to give consideration, and we will. I've also noted your comment on the issue of IDRM, or the dispute resolution mechanism. And as we agreed that let us divorce constituting of these bodies to hear and determine from NEB, because NEB could be the victims. It's also correct, and I think I've noted we will act on the issue of ensuring that the party code of conduct and the commitment, the pledge of commitment form is actually either becomes an annexure or is part of, we create a bullet for it in the rules, so that when somebody is having the rules, knows that there is this code of conduct that the party expects of him or her, And also now there is this pledge of commitment that stipulates what action is supposed to undertake. I have also noted the comment on the issue of being a state officer and provision for one to run, and then after winning, you may resign because now you have the mandate of the people. I think we are going to give it a consideration and include in our documents. Having said that, let me now allow the members who are in this meeting to also make their contributions. And like we said, members from the start, what has struck you as being good, or what has struck you as one requiring a remedy, please feel free. We will take the notes and then we will relay them to the relevant body for action. Over to you, members. Let's see who is ready.
Bwana Idi.
Yes, DC.
Yes, let me just begin. Thank you, Odede, for that comprehensive report and presentation. That is, mine is just a clarification. The part of being a NEB member, it's written that you cannot seek for nomination. So I was wondering, is it nomination? Is the party list nomination also part of the nomination, or is it just the parliamentary nomination? Yeah.
Let's have 2 or 3. Raise your hand, please. Mithika?
Madam has talked about the rigging of the election as the location of the polling station.
Beloved Mithika.
The madam has talked about the rigging of election as due to the location of the polling station. How does that? Can she elaborate on that?
Council, did you get the concern of Mithika? Hello, Council?
Not. Sorry.
Okay, Mithika, can you be loud? You're asking about polling station.
Yes, she said that a polling station can be a avenue for rigging an election. Now I was seeking clarification. How does the allocation of the polling station how is it an avenue of rigging the election?
Or that a polling station can be an avenue for rigging elections.
Yes.
So you want to clarify how that can happen.
Yes.
Okay, then let's have the third concern, then council can respond. It appears there is none. Council, yes.
Before, yes, I just wanted to bring to your attention, when you are reading out what you noted down, there's one that I think is important, and I didn't hear you saying it. The one where dispute resolution panel, we should rethink what NEB doesn't. We change it from NEB to NEC selection. So instead of a National Elections Board selecting the members of the dispute resolution panel that can bring conflict and kulipishana, we bring it to the NEC.
I thank you, DC. It's one issue that we will have to rethink as council put. So council, you have 2 issues that members would want to know. One, the issue of NEB and the lists, and then Mithika's concern of how can a polling station be an avenue for rigging.
Okay, thank you. Let me start with the polling station one. You see, location of polling stations are critical to participation of the people in an election. So if, for instance, you're vying for election in a zone, and then of course in this zone you have your strongholds and your opponent has their strongholds. Now if they locate more polling stations in your opponent's strongholds, it means people will walk shorter distance to the polling station, for one, and two, people will queue for shorter times. So therefore participation on that side will be higher. And if on this side there's only one polling station that is up the hill, at the top of that hill, my grandmother and all her colleagues will not come and vote. That's already rigging them out of that election process. So the location of polling stations can be used to rig an election outcome. And it has been done in the past. We are not talking new things here. It has been done in the past, and commonly it happens at nomination level, where people are able to influence certain things within a party. But the best way to go around this is always to have a meeting with the candidates at the time, at the branch level, because we have the elections board has county panels. So it is good to have meetings with the candidates at that level and agree on some of these little things. Like if you put it there, it's across the river. People have to cross this walking bridge to get to that polling station. They will not come. So that all these things are handled and tackled. And these are the kind of things I was saying. If we agree on ADR as part of the processes of the party, these are some of the things we can conciliate and negotiate around as we are coming up with the election processes. So that's how it can be rigged. So one of the provisions we can have in our nomination rules is that location of polling stations shall be decided upon in consultation between the county elections board and the candidates in that area. And that's just a simple clause, but it opens up room for a lot of discussion and agreement around some of these things. So I hope that explains to you my point and how we can resolve it going forward. Deputy Chair, you're asking around party list. Are party lists part of nominations? Yes, they are part of nominations, because at the end of all this, sorry? At the end of all this, the party is expected to provide a list of people who shall be their candidates for party list. And they are actually candidates. So it is up to a party to determine how these people arrived on a party list. Is it through universal suffrage as well, which a party can decide? A party can decide we are voting. We are going to vote for people who are going to be on that party list. A party can also decide we are rewarding. We are rewarding those who have stood with us all this time. And that's the procedure we are using. But it is all a nomination, because we must have a process where the lists are considered and the National Election Board endorses it, and then a National Executive Committee confirms it before it is sent to IEBC. And you have to convince IEBC, and this your ED I'm sure knows, that the process was fair, transparent, and inclusive. So it is part of the nomination process for the party, and the party has only one chance to amend that list going forward. Once the list is there, it is cast in stone. Like for now, I think Jubilee, they have those who are in the list behind those nominated senators. If these people are totally ejected, IBC will just go back to that list and look at those who had their provided to be their best candidates, and they shall be put into the Senate. So that list is actually a nomination of candidates for a party.
Wakili, mine was, can you be included in the party list and you're a member of NEB? Because I remember Pareno.
Oh, sorry. Yeah? Sorry. Then I had the question. Can a member of NEB be in the party list?
Yes, because now the first thing in other political parties. So I wanted clarification in ours, because I remember ODM nominated the chair of NEB, Pareno. So ours, is it the same or it's different?
Your rules are not very elaborate on that, but what you can use in your rules, the rules say that anybody who sits on NEB will not seek nomination as a candidate. So that means they will not even seek nomination on the party list. Properly constructed and interpreted, because the party list are also seeking nomination. You see, if you look at your rules, there's an application process where people who want to be on party lists will apply. So you will apply to be included, which means you're actually seeking to be nominated into the party list. And what is one of the oaths you take at NARC Kenya when you join the NEB is that you will not be seeking nomination as a candidate. So your rules actually bar a member of NEB from being appointed into the party list. And I think it is only fair because they sit on the final list. Isn't there a conflict of interest that you see there very, very clearly? But again, a party can decide to waive and exempt some of these provisions. It is your party, it is you making the rules. If you think it is time to reward this particular person who has been chairing our board very effectively, then the National Executive Council can actually sit down and say, we are providing a waiver of this condition on this justification. And the rules can therefore also expound and say that this provision that NEB members do not seek nomination has the exclusion when it comes to party list, where NEC can decide on its own volition to reward a member of NEB by giving them a nomination to the party list. So you can actually have that at that clause where we are saying members of NEB should not seek nomination. You can expound further and say, except in circumstances where the National Executive Committee on its own volition considers it necessary to reward a particular person in this manner. Then it opens it up.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Council. I can see Teresina Waruguru, you will go first.
Yes,
Teresina,
yeah, can you hear me? Good
proceed.
morning. Yes, mine is just to share on.
Proceed.
Mine is just to share. Can you hear me?
Teresa,
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yes.
we can hear
Proceed.
you. Continue.
Okay. Mine is just to share on the issue of disciplinary. If maybe the party can have levels of disciplinary, like red card, yellow card, and stuff like that, and then have NEC only deal with the very high level of disciplinary cases, and have the National Management Committee, NMC, deal with the lower disciplinary cases. Because when there was that contradiction as Faith was demonstrating to us. She also noticed that contradiction of NEC being the overall disciplinary action vis-a-vis the National Electoral Board. And there was a point that was trying to overrule the National Electoral Board and take the issue to the NEC. My point is, if there's category of mistake and issues, then we can have either of them. Even the National Electoral Board, maybe they can have that category that they deal with in disciplinary issues. Then we can have the NEC, and then we can have the National Management Committee also dealing. But NEC being the overall of these other, level.
Teresa,
Yeah.
Teresa, we hear you, but what you are telling us is what we have been dissuaded from. So the issues of dispute will not be handled by NEB. There is an organ which is called the dispute resolution.
Okay, all right.
That is where we will domicile issues of disputes. But thank you for bringing in the issue of yellow and red card. I think it's a matter that people can think around and see how useful it can become. Rosa, I see your hand is up. Rosa?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. And thank you, Council. My question is on time limit with the dispute resolution. I think we are missing on the time frame on how long dispute should be settled, just in case once dispute is settled and they're comfortable and they succeed and the processes have gone on, what happens to the applicant or the person who is raised the dispute? Thank you.
Thank you. Mithika?
Okay, I am asking on the criteria for party list. There is it says that not be a, you can be in a party list. You cannot be in a party list if you are not if you are a candidate or an aspirant. So to me, it should be vice versa. The candidates should be given the first priority because they have been in the party and they have been with you all through. So they should be vice versa.
Okay, council will respond. Macrin? Unmute yourself, Macrin.
My concern is on the special interest groups, and the list that tops PWDs, abled differently people, and youth and women. We have had our rules and the great presentation from the council. And my question was, these rules, these general rules that we have as a party, because we have not seen special provisions for the PWDs. Do other parties have special rules for this special group, the PWDs, the youth and women, or are they the rules? Do they do they apply to all people? Example, an MCA who is able to, who is supposed to bring or to recruit 250. If a PWD is an MCA, is he or she supposed to do the same? Like, do we have, or would other parties have the special rules for special people?
Okay, thank you. Council, you have a matter on the timelines and which you had spoken to. Maybe you need to clarify. Yes, we don't have, and therefore there is need. Then the party list, Mithika is asking, because currently in 2017, the rule was that you could not belong in two. You could not run and be on a party list. So Mithika wishes that you speak to the same. And now McQueen is asking you, now that Kenya has application of demands applying across all it is and candidates respective Article 100. She's asking, do other parties have a special provision for Article 100, or are they also like us? Council.
Thank you. I hope if I say they are like you, hamtasema basi tuko sawa.
Apada.
Anyway, let me start with the candidates being in party list. It's actually a statutory barrier. It's the law that says people who seek nomination or are candidates are not allowed to be included in the party list. So that is a statutory provision. We are looking at that barrier being lifted in the proposed BBI amendments, which now opens up to say that candidates who participated and got the greatest number of votes may be nominated into the National Assembly. So I don't know about the BBI and its ability to pass. That's another story. But that's where that opening is created. But for now, the law bars a political party from including in its list people who participated as candidates. So the hands are tied unless we can move an amendment in the National Assembly. About the PWDs, most political parties, what the most they do is give waiver on nomination fees, but they do not have any serious affirmative action clauses in trying to achieve the election of this group of people as candidates. I've not seen a party that has been able to make a clause in that regard. And therefore, it still remains a challenge, not just for political parties, even for Kenya as a whole, to try and find a way around this Article 100 provisions. I don't know how we can do this, but I think the answer just lies in top up, if I may call it that. Because at the ballot box, it is universal suffrage. You cannot force the vote to go east or west. The vote will go where it is going. So after the election, the only way, if we really, really must achieve these provisions, then has to be through top up. And that's the only way I see possible right now in terms of that, because people will exercise their right to vote the way they want to vote. And taking it away in any other way by insisting, say that we are a party and say it's Nairobi and we say 4 of the constituencies, we must have women. And we reserve this for women. We are actually then taking away the rights of our brothers who come from those 4 constituencies. And that again is bias, it's discrimination, it's unfair. So it's a very hard balance to achieve through the ballot box. And I think we've just got to find a way of either empowering more women to actively participate, capacity build so that women can participate in elections. I don't see a shortcut to it. If it's not top up, it is to empower women, and probably then civic education to the voters that women can also be good leaders. I don't know, but the story has to change otherwise than forcing the ballot box to change its story. Yeah, so that's it. And then the lady who spoke about timelines, I agree with her. Timelines are crucial. And if you listen to my opening remarks, that's one of the things I stated, that when we are forming a dispute resolution body, by whatever name we call it, timelines are necessary because election processes are time sensitive. They are all very time sensitive. The ED will tell you, I think those days he doesn't sleep, trying to upload the names onto the website by the last minute. And certificates keep coming and orders coming from this court, and I won yesterday and I've got your opponent wins again tomorrow. It's a very challenging time and it's a very time sensitive process. So even for a party, it's crucial to kind of have a deadline to when your dispute resolution body will finish its cases, so that you can have some breathing spaces between your dispute resolution body and the political party, the tribunal and high court processes, and all these other negotiations in ADR. Its timelines are crucial. We cannot wish them away. And for neatness, it would be nice to say that disputes brought to the tribunal must be heard and decided within, say, 72 hours. Disputes must be brought to tribunal within 48 hours, and appeals should be filed within so many hours. Let's just have those in so that we give ourselves sufficient time to work with the IBC calendar as well. That's a time that we are also as a party dictated by outside forces, and it's normally a very versatile time, a very fluid time. Things change by the hour. and some people appeal up to the last minute. The names are going to IBC and bado wako kotini mchana. So you can see how timelines are very crucial for that process. Thank you very much, Tabu.
Okay, thank you, Council. It appears like we don't have any other issues to be raised. I also want to admit that, yes, we shall restore our document. It will move from National Elections and Nominations Board. It will be something. I've also taken note of that. I forgot to mention it when I was raising the issues that I have noted. If members have no other concerns to raise, remember, members, you've been told that other than the issues raised by council, our nomination, election and nomination rules and procedures are good. So you can be sure that even as you plan to run with those improvements, we are going to have the very best of the rules. But this conversation does not stop here. We still need to continue having it. And Council, if you have any parting shot, you can give us before we go back to Maureen. and see what follows.
Just one thing that you mentioned, and if I remember it, you talked about where to place the forms in the document. It would be tidier if they came at the end as an annex, not within the document. Yeah. It would be nice to have all those things, the oath of commitment, the oath of the code of conduct, the nomination forms, if you're going to attach them, watch as it were at the back of the document as annexes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Council.
So asanteni sana.
Tabu, if you can hear me.
Council is speaking, and then we come to you, Maureen.
Yes, before Roslyn comes in and we wind it up, I can see Samuel Tuwe has physically raised his hand. Maybe, and then we also have Ndegwa's hand up.
Okay, you're right.
Yes.
Okay.
Samuel.
Tuwe.
Yeah.
Okay, Tuwe, can you proceed? He didn't use the right platform, but it's okay. Tuwe. We can't hear you, Tuwe. Okay, as Tuwe sorts his network, Ndegwa.
Hello.
Gucci. Both of you have connived to have the same challenge. Maybe you can write on the chat. We can read.
Yeah, or you may consider Samuel.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, my question is there like yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay,
so my question,
proceed, Googie. Now your network is sorted.
Yes, so my question is there like a time limit or deadline for when the party lists must have been compiled before probably the elections come?
A deadline as when the party list must have been compiled. Okay, Tuwe, is your network okay now?
Yes, okay. You can hear me, right?
No, we can't hear you, Tuwe. Can you type? Oh. Unfortunate Tuwe. Are you able to type somewhere on the chat? Okay, Council, respond to Ngugi Ndegwa's concern about the party list and the timeline. Is there a deadline?
Yes, there is a deadline. It's in the Constitution, I think Article 90. I'll just have to go back and find the exact period. But there is a deadline when this list should be provided to the IEBC. And normally it should be provided before the election date.
Thank you. Okay, from the chat, I can see some members are requesting if they can get the presentation shared for further interaction. I think that one is okay. Out. And there being no other concern before I finally close. Maureen, do you have something?
Was not able to write.
I'm looking at the chat. There is nothing from Tuwe. Maybe we will talk and we will get to you for that comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Maureen?
Yes, Bonatabu, thank you so much. I don't know if Tugoi was able to, disconnect and connect again. I think the problem was from his mouthpiece, from the earphones he was using.
Has he
Because
dropped
I
off?
cannot see any. I think he just switched off his
We'll follow up
video.
with him.
Okay. Then that will be in order. Then I can clearly say then that this brings us to the end of the meeting. And so let me take this opportunity to thank everyone for finding time to attend the meeting today, and also thank Ms. Roslyn Notede for facilitating this meeting and taking the NAC members through their constitution and also the nomination and election rules. I've also gotten a chance to learn and know more about the party and what their nomination and election rules entails. And also to thank Mr. Tabu Daniels for moderating this session. It was actually a very interactive session, and thank you so much for moderating it to ensure that we have participants, contributing in an orderly manner. Thank you so much for that. From us here in CMD, just to say that we are very grateful to have had you online today, and we hope that as we continue, progressing with the year, we'll continue getting to interact more. And I also promise that I'll be making follow-up with Mr. Tabu to ensure that the comments and the propositions that have been made by the party members and the various sections that you've promised to implement and amend have been done. So from us in CMD, just to say asante sana to everyone for taking time out to attend this meeting, and mkuwe na mchana mwema, and we hope we'll continue to engage for the rest of the year. Asante sana and goodbye.
Thank you. And goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.